What most distresses souls of goodwill who are seriously trying to live a spiritual life is to find themselves falling so many times, despite their continual and sincere resolutions. When they begin a program of asceticism, they are usually very brave and have no doubts concerning their success. But being still inexperienced and not having yet faced the demands of more advanced virtue, they know nothing of the struggles that await them on this way. And herein lies the danger. Meeting with new difficulties, they fall. They rise and fall again. Again they rise, and shortly after, find themselves prostrate once more until they are, at a certain point, attacked by that most dangerous temptation to give up the undertaking which henceforth seems impossible. How many souls have fervently begun the ascent of the Mount of Perfection, but discouraged by their continual falls, have stopped halfway up, or even turned back, because they lacked the courage to begin anew every day and every moment. Humility is needed for the exercise of courage. We must be convinced that in spite of our lofty aspirations, we are fallible men like all the rest. Sacred Scripture affirms that the just man shall fall 7 times and shall rise again. Proverbs 24:16. How then can we, who are not just, pretend never to fall? The real evil is not so much in falling as in failing to rise. The distinguishing mark of fervent souls, and even of saints, is less their lack of faults than their promptness in rising after each fall. The annoyance felt by so many souls when they see themselves continually falling is not the fruit of humility, but of pride. They are not yet convinced of their own misery and are astonished to experience it so constantly. They rely too much on themselves, and God, who wishes to lead them to the full realization of their nothingness, permits them to fall again and again. In the plan of divine providence, these falls are for the definite purpose of convincing us that we are miserable creatures. If we wish to adhere to the divine plan, we have but one thing to do: to humble ourselves. But if, on the contrary, we become discouraged and give up what we have begun, we shall be going farther away from our goal, to our very great loss. Some souls justify their discouragement, saying that they cannot bear to offend God. That is well, for the first condition required for sanctity is a hatred for sin and a firm determination to avoid even the slightest sin, at the cost of any sacrifice. However, we must make a distinction. If we cultivate the sincere disposition not to tolerate in ourselves the slightest offense against God, it signifies our intention to make no truce with the faults and failings which, in spite of our goodwill, escape us. However, if we do fall, notwithstanding all our efforts, this disposition does not authorize us to become so discouraged that we are unable to rise. It is just because we do not wish to tolerate in ourselves anything displeasing to God that we should never surrender in the struggle, but begin again vigorously in order to avoid future falls. On this field, he who surrenders is already conquered. In fact, if, even when we are fighting without respite, we are liable to fall, what will happen if we surrender our arms? It will always be better to fight maimed and wounded than not to fight at all. But to have the courage to persevere in the struggle, especially when we fall repeatedly, either as a result of our imperfection and frailty, or because God permits it in order to humble us more. We must join to humility an immense confidence in the divine help. Having experienced our own misery, we know that we cannot rise relying on our own strength. But there still remains to us a much more powerful resource: trust in the help of God. We shall find the strength to keep beginning again, precisely in trust. God alone can give us this strength, and he will give it in the measure of our confidence. The more trust we have in him, the stronger we shall be. The more convinced we are that God is calling us to sanctity, and that our personal resources are insufficient for attaining it, so much the more should we be convinced that God will furnish us with the help needed to answer his call. There is nothing illogical in God. If he asks something from us, he cannot refuse the help needed to give it to him. Not finding this strength in ourselves, we shall surely find it in him, in his omnipotent help. He that shall persevere unto the end, he shall be saved, said Jesus. Matthew 10:22. He who will persevere unto the end is not he who will never fall, but he who after every fall will humble himself and rise again, relying on the infinite strength of God.